Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Herbal Prepper Live, where we discuss herbal and natural medicine for emergency preparedness because your health deserves a Plan B. I'm your host, Kat, the Herbal Prepper. My goal is to help you and your family be better prepared for life's emergencies, especially when there are no doctors or pharmacies available. Before I kick off tonight's show, however, I need to satisfy the legal department here with a few quick disclaimers. I am not a doctor. I do not prescribe or practice medicine. I do not diagnose, treat, or claim to cure any disease or illness. If you need medical advice or treatment, please seek out a licensed physician. All listeners are strongly encouraged to learn and research the safety and efficacy of herbal remedies for themselves and to develop their own opinions. The topics discussed are hypothetical and provided for informational purposes only. Use at your own risk and with a heavy dose of common sense. With that said, Herbal Prepper Live is one herbalist's opinion on alternatives to modern medicine during a total collapse of our way of life. In this hypothetical scenario, there are no doctors, no EMTs, no hospitals, and no pharmacies. Professional medical help is simply not an option. If you or your loved ones need health care, the buck stops with you. So I ask you, if we were faced with the end of the world as we know it tomorrow, such as an economic collapse, an EMP or other attack on our electrical grid, civil unrest, martial law, the suspension of the Constitution, the zombie apocalypse itself, could you care for your and your loved one's health care needs? If you answered no and you'd like to change that, please keep listening because this show is for you.
All right, so with that out of the way, welcome everyone back to another episode of Herbal Prepper Live. Our show airs live every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern and 4 p.m. Pacific. I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here tonight. I'm looking in the chat room, and there's loads of people there, so I greatly appreciate you being here. I am sorry that I have been away so much over this past month or so on. I think it's been about a month here, but last week I had a bit of a relapse of that respiratory nastiness that I had, and I'm not sure if that's feedback, Ashley, or if that's just actually my voice cracking. I'm not positive, so hopefully it's just my voice here. But last week I had absolutely zero voice. All right, so is it really staticky? If it is, then I can try calling in to see if that is any better. I'll do that at the break. So anyway, let me just get through a little bit here. I had no voice last week. There was just no way I could do a show because of my voice. It just didn't exist from all of the coughing. I was going to do a show anyway on another cold and flu show. The one I did 2 weeks ago now was all based upon what you could get usually at the grocery store. So for those people who haven't been stocking up on medicinal herbs and anything outside of like the common ginger, garlic, cinnamon kind of thing, you could find everything you needed for those remedies right at the local store. But there are other plant-based medicines out there, other herbs and other plants with therapeutic benefits that you really should consider stocking up on. And when it comes to cold and flu season, this is, you know what? I'm going to take a break here, and we'll deal with the static thing. I'll call in. Let's take a break right here, and we'll be right back.
Do you have the ultimate wood-burning collapsible survival and camping stove? Stop looking. The Under 6 Elite Survival Stove by SurvivalStoveworks.com can cook a meal in under 6 minutes with just a few twigs and sticks and without all the smoke and black soot. The Under 6 Elite weighs under 6 pounds and can be assembled in under 1 minute. This survival stove is made in the USA by patriots and preppers like you with high-quality steel. The Under 6 Elite Stove with all the extras is also easy to store and transport in its own carrying case. It's on sale now with free shipping. See it in action and get yours now at SurvivalStoveworks.com. That's SurvivalStoveworks.com. It shouldn't be all about outdoor survival. Think prospering outdoors. Prospering Outdoors is more than just getting by. Prospering Outdoors is about having the quality gear or supplies you want when you need it. From camping and hunting supplies to prepping and survival kits, you'll find it all at prosperingoutdoors.com. You don't have to search for that hard-to-find item. With over 35 categories to choose from, Prospering Outdoors has it or will find it. Save time and money. Surprise yourself with lower prices on quality brand names at Prospering Outdoors. If it's outdoors, hunting, camping, prepping, or surviving a horde of zombies, you will prosper with the quality you expect at the price you want. Visit prosperingoutdoors.com.
All right, so hopefully you can all hear me now. So let's see. Can you hear me? Someone let me know if this is any better. Is this connection any better, or is there still static? Oh, okay, great. Wonderful. What I was saying, last week I couldn't do a show because I had absolutely no voice. So I'm glad that this connection here, this is better now. So I don't want to be straining my voice. What little I have of it now. So it's been a heck of a couple of weeks here of just really bad coughing. And, it's not to say that the stuff from the grocery store can't get the job done, but sometimes there are some other herbs here that you can use that may be a little bit more appropriate. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. That was what I was planning the show on anyway, but I want to, kind of go through some of the ones that I used specifically over this week and why I did. I got to tell you, first of all, that just sitting down and doing absolutely nothing, drives me absolutely batty. It's one of the most important things to consider when you are that sick, when you have a flu, and let's say, when you've got that kind of an infection where you're just laying in bed and there's nothing else you can do but just lay down. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Even then, I'm still trying to get up and go do something. I think a lot of preppers do also. We sort of feel that pressure and that urgency to get up and get things done. But unfortunately, that's not going to help you. But after a few days in bed, sitting up for a while, and that was driving me nuts to literally just sit there and not do anything. It was driving me a little bonkers. So something that I want to say, though, is that I am very grateful for the fact that I had all of these remedies made ahead of time. And I'm very grateful for the fact that I have food storage. So that I didn't have to, you think about this. Both kids got sick. I got sick. My husband was sick. There was a lot of overlap there. So we were all sick at the same time. And, so it's not just that you're sick, but you're sick and taking care of other people. So that, that's challenging no matter what. But, I am grateful for the fact that I didn't really have to get up and, and cook a whole lot. I didn't have to get up and prepare lots of remedies, like at that very moment. Like, okay, so that can be fun to do if you're feeling fine, but someone else is sick, and you want to, sort of tailor the remedy just to what they need at that moment. That's fun. At least I find that fun. But when you're not feeling well, it's not so fun because you don't want to be standing up, over a hot stove when you're already sweating, and it's just miserable to do that. So I'm very grateful that I had a lot of stuff ready ahead of time. So I would strongly encourage you, because I know that in my area, this flu that's been going around is really bad. We got a phone call from the kids' karate school. And they're like, they haven't been here. It's been 2 weeks. What's going on? They always, they check on that because they want to make sure, the kids aren't losing interest. They've got their business to think of. But anyway, they do these calls when you haven't been there in a while. And I told them, well, they've been very sick. And apparently the feedback there was that, yeah, that's what they're hearing from every parent or everybody that they're calling. There's this really, really bad flu going around. And if it hasn't hit your area yet, that's fine. You have until about March or April or so. Well, technically, I guess it'll go to May, but around March or April is when you start to see a real diminishing number of influenza infections. So we got a little time for it to get around to where you're at. Now, I hope that you don't actually get sick. There are some things that led to this being a much worse infection for my husband and I than it was for the kid. And this is important. This is why I'm going to spend a little time on this, is that by the time, by the time that we got exposed to this and whatnot, we had just sort of been through, let's say about a month of, we'd just been in emergency mode. I kind of mentioned it a little bit 2 weeks ago. There was an issue with one of my children at their school with, unfortunately, some bullying going on there, and it was something that escalated very quickly. And for my son's safety and well-being, we needed to act very quickly and get him someplace else. And this was a very stressful sort of a thing that was going on, and really it was nonstop. Like every single day I was in the school, something else was happening, and I had to, anyway. Long story short, this was very stressful on the whole family. And in that time, I was not eating well. I wasn't getting a whole lot of rest. I was stressed all the time. It's very easy to forget about your basic needs when something stressful is going on. And for any parent, when something's going on with one of your kids, you know what that feeling's like. So same thing also with my husband. And, it was just one of those things. When you're stressed out and you're not taking care of yourself, or either one, maybe you are taking care of yourself, but there's still a lot of stress, or maybe there's no stress, but you're not taking care of yourself very well because you just don't. Either way, when you put the two of them together, your immune response is just not what it's going to be. Excuse me. Anyway, try not to get run down. I know it's like I'm not taking my own advice, but I'm trying to, because I've got a lot of work to get caught up on. And I'm trying to do it in a way where I'm not going to work myself into, another infection of some type. I don't want to go down that road again. I'm going to try and take my own advice here. But try to look after your needs. Try to get, sleep. Try to eat well. Try to lower that stress somehow, because ultimately, especially this time of year where there's all these infections going around, you don't want to make yourself more susceptible to something. All right, so that's how I got to this point. There's one other thing I want to mention before we get into a discussion of some of these herbs here and how to use them and some of the different ways you can use them. I want to make one announcement for anyone who has been interested in the wound care class that is going to be on herbalprepper.com, that's being taught by Chuck Hudson, who is in the chat room tonight and also has been a frequent guest of the show. He got a fabulous offer. His day job, and still in the medical field at a hospital, but required him to relocate out of state. So we've had to postpone the class a little bit. The new start date is going to be December 4th. It was one of those, great, sort of opportunities can't pass up. So definitely wish him a lot of success there. And the course will get started, like I said, on December 4th. So with that out of the way, I think, let's see. All right, let's get started talking a little bit about some herbs. One moment. I do apologize. I may still be coughing a little bit here, but I'm just thrilled to have a voice this week, and I'm thrilled to see everybody here. This is wonderful. All right, so one of those herbs that I want to talk about is mullein. I believe I believe, I may be wrong, but I believe if you go through all of my archived episodes here on Prepper Broadcasting, I believe I had an episode that was just on mullein, Verbascum sapsis. This plant, this grows just about everywhere. It's got these, in the very first year, you want the leaves from the first year plant. The first year it grows this big rosette of these big, soft leaves. And then the second year, there's a very tall stalk that comes up. There's these little yellow flowers all over it. Looks like a torch. And mullins, it's let me type it in here. It's mullein, Mullein. So that's the herb that we're talking about here. And let me type in, this is Verbascum sapsis. And I've typed that in the chat room there. That's the binomial name, the scientific name. So mullein, in the second year, like I said, it grows this big stalk and there's these little yellow flowers on it. And you can collect those yellow flowers because they make a wonderful infused oil for earaches. But what you want for these respiratory infections, because this is a wonderful herb for the lungs. You want the first year leaves. And there's a number of different things that you can do with them. The most obvious one is you can make a tea out of them. So you can make a tea out of these leaves. And you would dry the leaves, chop them up as small as you want, store them, and so on. But believe me, there was in every tea blend that I had my mullein leaves in there. It's a wonderful herb for the lungs in that it helps to calm the cough, and it also helps to make those coughs more productive. So it's an expectorant herb, and when you've got, unfortunately, sometimes when you start out with, an infection and it's in the upper respiratory there, your head's all congested, but then sometimes it moves down into the lungs. Yeah, and Ashley, that's the next thing I'm going to talk about is sometimes you smoke it, and that's exactly what I had to do for this too. When you smoke it, I know that this sounds counterintuitive. Why on earth would you do anything for the lungs where you smoke it? Actually, smoking mullein is something you can do for acute asthma. I know a number of people who do this for acute asthma because this is the fastest way of getting it into your body and to get it into the system. I mean, yes, you can take tea, but then it has to be processed through your digestive system. But this is bringing it directly into the lungs, and it's bringing its medicine directly into the lungs. Now, when you do this, you have to have a little bit of preparation in mind. You can just get the dried mullein and roll it up in rolling paper, or you can use a pipe, and you can smoke it that way. But when you make a good smoking blend, a lot of really super dry, crispy, dry herbs do not make for a good smoke. So you can get it. You can buy it, and you can use it that way. But if you can, a lot of smoking blends are kept where they're dry, but they're not crispy dry. So it's kind of a delicate balance to this. I know that it's not like 100% like completely bone dry. It makes for a better smoking blend that way. It makes it an easier smoke to have. But otherwise, if you're not harvesting it yourself and drying it yourself, and all you can get is the dried herb from various herbal stores, then you can use that. Smoking herbs is something that I think a lot of people have shied away from, and obviously, you're taking smoke into your lungs. I mean, if you were to do that on a regular basis all the time, that's probably not a good idea. But we're talking about, very small doses of this on very rare occasions, taken medicinally for a specific issue that is going to be over and done with, we're talking like within a matter of days or a week or something. I'm not talking about an ongoing habit of it. In general, I prefer not to be breathing in lots of smoke, but we're talking about herbal smokes here where they bring it. This stuff grows everywhere like a weed. So, you should be able to find it. All right, let me see. So in doing that, that was very helpful. It is light and fluffy. It is a very light and fluffy thing. It's one of those that if you're going to make a tincture of it, it'd be very difficult, I think, to make a percolation tincture out of this. It's probably just best to make a maceration of it if you wanted to go that route. Just a maceration is, you just put it in a jar, cover it with alcohol, let it sit, and so on. I think it will be a very difficult. It's just so fluffy. I think it'll be very difficult to get it to powder properly. At least that's my suspicion. I've always just macerated it. Let's see here. Something else that I wanted to talk about, another herb that I used quite a lot. There's two of them. There's Elecampane and there's coltsfoot. Let's talk a little bit about Elecampane. This is it's a very pretty little. Well, I think they're pretty. I guess other people might consider it a weed, but I find it to be pretty. But Elecampane is this yellow flower. It can grow. It's quite tall, several feet tall. These little yellow flowers up top. They might, when they're closer to the ground, like the coltsfoot, you might. Both of these are yellow flowers, and if you weren't paying attention at first, you might think the coltsfoot is dandelion. It looks very similar to that. And the Elecampane, it doesn't quite look like a dandelion, but there's a resemblance there. It's much taller, though. But this is an herb that's used to strengthen your respiratory system. It's a tonic for the respiratory system. It's something that can be, Elecampane is specifically what I'm talking about now. It's something that can be used for, and let me type this in the chat room, Elecampane. This is something that you can use for, let's say, asthma. I wouldn't use it for acute asthma. It would be something that if you were taking this, as a tea. If you were, sometimes just drinking a hot liquid is enough to stop a minor asthma attack. But I would use this more as to keep the attacks away, so more as a maintenance sort of a thing to reduce that number. That would be how I would use it. But for bronchitis, so that's what I ended up with from the flu. So when you have a viral infection, and sometimes I wish doctors were a little bit more precise when they would speak to people. I recall doctors telling me things like this, things about viruses and bacteria and such that were a little imprecise. I like things to be, if I can, I like them to be precise. So I would hear things like, well, it was viral, now it's gone to bacterial, so we'll give you an antibiotic. Well, viruses don't magically transition into bacterial infections. If it's a viral infection, it's a virus. But what happens is that you've been compromised with this virus, this viral infection, and it makes it easier for a bacterial infection to happen. The bacteria is much larger than a virus, and your body normally can fight that sort of thing off easier. But now you've been, compromised by this viral infection, and now you end up with this bacterial infection as a secondary infection. And pneumonia, just like you mentioned, Jay Fergie, is a secondary infection that you can end up with from, something like influenza. When people talk about a deadly flu, most people don't actually die of the flu. It's the secondary bacterial infection that follows, where people, a lot of people who've got compromised immune systems, so let's say someone who's been going through treatments for cancer, or if you are diabetic, or if you've got some other chronic illness, if you are someone who, let's say, someone who's elderly or someone who's on any type of medication that might lower your immune response. Anyway, the point is that you're more susceptible to developing something like pneumonia or bronchitis. Let me see. Oh, good, Mrs. Prepper. Glad to see that you've got Elecampane on the way. I had a number of, I was doing a lot of tea with Elecampane, coltsfoot, thyme. It wasn't very pleasant tasting, I'll be up front. But at that point, look, when you're sick, you can't really taste things anyway. At least they don't taste the way they normally do. And I was using a lot of thyme, but not just making a lot of tea, but I was also using the tea first as an herbal steam. So I had my big cup, my big cup, and I had thyme in it, and I had my Elecampane, and that's not really that aromatic, but I had these things in there, and I was drinking it, but I was inhaling the steam first. I like to have thyme both as the tea and as steam. Thyme, if you look back on some of my older shows, some of the very, very first ones, I'm like 99% sure that I did a show just on Mullein. I'm also 99% sure I did a show just on thyme. And if I haven't, then I need to get those done. I'm almost positive I have, but if not, I'm going to go back and do some, just an entire show just on one herb, because they have many uses. But thyme is, I think I did a blog post once called "Thyme is Your Respiratory System's Best Friend." Oh gosh, I need to do a show on the plague too. Yeah, Joan of Arc fears a deadly plague that has killed 140 people in Madagascar can mutate and become untreatable. That's always a possibility. It really is. It's excuse me. It's always a possibility with any of these infections that if it mutates, we won't have an antibiotic that it's not resistant to, because that's the fear. Because if it mutates, the antibiotics may not, they may not work. Antibiotic resistance is a big concern. And every time you have an individual who becomes infected, regardless of what it is, they get someone who's infected and you give them antibiotics, that is an opportunity for that bacteria to learn how to become resistant to it. So that is a big concern. Plague, it's one of those things that if you treat it quickly with the right antibiotic, we know how to treat it now. We have a treatment plan for that, and that's a very good thing. But we have to treat these antibiotics like they're precious things. I know that I had a number of people telling me, well, why don't you go to the doctor and get some antibiotics? I'm like, this is like day 4 into the flu. It's like, right now, this is still viral. There's nothing that an antibiotic is going to do. I don't know if any of you, but I got one of those dads that, how should I put it? The moment you get sick, you should immediately go to the doctor and get antibiotics. And that's not how things work. An antibiotic is going to do nothing against a viral infection. That's why I had influenza. If antibiotics don't work, will these herbs then work? Depends what you're asking about. Work against what specifically? Talking about flus or bronchitis or something like, or pneumonia, or are you talking about plague? Because if it's about plague, I got nothing. I wish I had something, but I got nothing. I got a little irritated when someone posted on my Facebook page, my Herbal Prepper Facebook page, about Four Thieves oil and Four Thieves vinegar and that kind of thing. Look, that, there's a bit of herbal folklore that they were these thieves, they were robbing people during the plague, and they avoided getting sick by using a vinegar that they would dunk some cloth in and put over their nose. Look, if that worked, those were really common herbs to use, then the plague wouldn't have been so deadly. I'm going to tell you right now. If those herbs would have worked, then you wouldn't have had so many millions of people dead. Just like that freaking onion thing. If I have to see one more ridiculous meme about that onion, if you've been on social media at all, you probably know what I'm talking about. They say there's an onion, you cut it in half, you put it in a room, and it absorbs bacteria out of the air. It's like, that's not how things work. That's called oxidation. It's turning black because of oxidation. It didn't absorb anything out of the air. And, but there's all sorts of, the sock thing, sock onions. And the only thing the sock onion is going to do is make your feet stink like feet and onions. That's all it's going to do. But if these stories about onions were going to help the plague at all, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, but if the onion was going to help cure the plague, onions were cheap. Even back then, everybody could get an onion. If that kind of thing worked, the plague would not have been so deadly. So, unfortunately, we're kind of dependent upon antibiotics to, keep the plague at bay. But I will, I don't want to get sidetracked because there's actually quite a bit that I want to say about the plague. You know what? Maybe next week. I was going to wait a couple of weeks. Next week we'll do a show on the plague. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have a magical herbal cure for it, but we do need to talk about it. And there are some things you can do to at least minimize the risk of catching it. I have nothing to help if you actually do become infected, though. So I'm going to be very honest about that. So anyway, but back to influenza and bronchitis and such. I'm talking about thyme. Definitely look that up. In my book, I've got an herbal blend that I've used with a number of clients and family who ended up with pneumonia and for one reason or another did not get treatment from a doctor. Sometimes this was because they did not have any other form of care available to them. And then in at least one other case, the doctor sent them home saying they were fine, they just had the flu. But when you actually listen to the lungs, because if you get the opportunity, get a stethoscope and when you know that someone has pneumonia, they've got a certain kind of a cough, and you'll recognize that sound, but listen to what their lungs sound like, and listen to what healthy lungs sound like. It's like a washing machine. You can't mistake that sound, but definitely do that anyway. This individual lung sounded just like a washing machine. So there's a blend of essential oils that I have in my book that I've used in that scenario. But I can tell you that one of the primary herbs in there is thyme, and that's and it hasn't failed me yet on that. But we're going to take a quick break. Let the station pay some bills. It'll be a very short break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Joe Alton, MD, also known as Dr. Bones of the award-winning survival medicine website doomandbloom.net, and co-author of the bestseller, The Survival Medicine Handbook. As a medical doctor, I know how important it is to have knowledge, but you'll need supplies if you're going to save lives in a disaster. We've got an entire line of medical kits for every homestead, retreat, workplace, vehicle, church, school, just about any purpose you might imagine, and they're all put together by a real MD and nurse practitioner. Other kits are fine when the ambulance is on the way, but when you're the end of the line with regards to your family's well-being, you'll be a more effective medical asset with kits and supplies uniquely designed for tough times and packed in the USA. Prepare your family for any disaster with medical kits and supplies at store.doomandbloom.net. That's store.doomandbloom.net. Make medical kits by Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy a part of your medical storage. You'll be glad.
Do not buy emergency food until you compare Legacy Food Storage. You already know you need an emergency food supply. Legacy wants to ensure that you get higher quality, longer shelf life, better tasting non-GMO freeze-dried food, and Legacy gives you up to double food for your money. There's a huge secret our competitors don't want you to know. Never compare food storage based on cost per serving, because serving sizes vary. Compare based on the weight of the food. Legacy gives up to double the food for your budget. Visit LegacyFoodStorage.com. That's LegacyFoodStorage.com. Use coupon code PREPPER to save 15% on your order.
All right, so we're back, and just looking in the chat room here for those who end up listening to this later on and are not here tonight. You're missing a great conversation. Lots of people in chat room tonight. So, but anyway, very sorry to hear, Jay Ferdy, that you had a friend pass from walking pneumonia and never knew it. So, pneumonia is nothing to mess with. Hopefully, what we can do is, one, not get so sick in the first place, but definitely we need to take a look at, so about the 4-thieves vinegar, no, that does not work. It's sort of like this little bit of folklore kind of a thing. There's no evidence behind it that this works. And think about that. You really can't, there's really no opportunity to test this kind of a thing. I'm not about to go test it. So, it's just the only thing I would say is that there were these plague. I'm going to save that and save that for next week. It's about the plague. But please do not trust the 4-thieves oil blend or 4-thieves vinegar to protect you from plague. Just please don't do that. All right, so back to, bronchitis. We'll talk about that. Thyme, I was mentioning that, is one of our most antimicrobial herbs that we've got. And you can get this at the grocery store. You can buy it in bulk. You can grow it in your yard. This is something that I generally have a lot of. I use it in cooking, and I use it in my herbal remedies. It's wonderful when you do a steam inhalation. It brings the medicine from the thyme right to your lungs. Just like smoking an herb, steam will do a very similar thing. So something like with that, and with juniper berries, and with lemon peel. There's a number of other things you could add to it if you want like a very simplified herbal steams, and those 3 things would be something I would use. Let me see. What was I? Somehow we're talking now about apple cider vinegar. Good stuff. Always make sure if you're making chicken soup or something that you put a little bit of vinegar in there. It helps to draw the minerals out of the bones. Another big star in getting over this flu thing here, this flu and this bronchial thing, was chicken soup, and just sipping on the bone broth from making chicken stock. And I had a ton of it on hand anyway. Some of it was in the freezer, and some of it was canned up. I used all the stuff that was in the freezer. If you haven't gotten one of these gadgets yet, do yourself a really big favor and go out and get yourself an Instant Pot. Like I was saying early in the show, I was really grateful to have all these things already made, but I did go right through the chicken stock. It used to take me a full 24 hours to make my chicken stock in a crock pot. From start to finish, it takes me about 3 hours, the time it takes to get the pressure up and then the cook time. In 3 hours, I have something that would normally take me a full day to make. and it, the rate that everybody in the house was drinking this. I'm very grateful to have one of these Instant Pots. All right, so let me see, bronchitis. So one of the things with that, you have this really rough cough, and these coughing fits start, and you can't stop them. And after a couple of days of this, your stomach hurts, your sides hurt, everything hurts, your lungs hurt, it's miserable. Mullein, again, is a wonderful expectorant, but when it's that painful, when it's really that painful to cough, I did add, speaking of apple cider vinegar in there, I added a bit of lobelia to what I was taking to my protocol that I made for myself. Lobelia, generally a low-dose herb, I guess, for people. It doesn't really require much for an effect, but it's best made where there's some apple cider vinegar, right? Not just apple cider, but vinegar. There's an acid. There has to be an acid involved in order to properly get a good extraction of lobelia. So you can make a tincture out of it, but you're going to have to include some vinegar in your solvent, into your menstruum that you're using. Or you can just make a straight vinegar, an herbal vinegar with lobelia, and that's what I did. And when you're dosing something from an herbal vinegar versus a tincture, it changes the amount there just a little bit. But I ended up taking about a teaspoon, every time I had one of these really bad coughing fits. And let me see, lobelia is not something you want to make a tea out of. I will warn you of that ahead of time. Lobelia, when you make a tea out of this, is an emetic. And something that's an emetic will make you vomit. So there's a time and place for that. And it's not like if you take one sip of tea that has lobelia in it, that one sip is all of a sudden going to induce that response. It's not quite like that. But if you keep drinking that cup of tea, you're not going to be feeling too well. However, when taken in a tincture form, or an herbal vinegar form, or some combination of alcohol and vinegar together as your menstruum. Yeah, it's called pukeweed. But when you take it that way, as a tincture that has some acid in it, or as an herbal vinegar, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that emetic action to it. What it is, however, is a fabulous antispasmodic. So while mullein is a wonderful expectorant, lobelia is also a good expectorant, a very, very effective antispasmodic, and it will help to calm the lungs. When you've got that really horrible, painful cough, and you just need to get it to stop for a little while. I wouldn't be taking large amounts of it. It's not necessary to take large amounts of it, but I ended up taking a teaspoon whenever I had one of these really bad coughing fits. And that did help a lot. You could certainly add that to, when I say I took it, you can take a teaspoon straight. You can add it to a cup of tea that has other respiratory herbs in it. You've already done the extraction into your alcohol or your alcohol and vinegar combination, or your vinegar, whatever. So it's not like making a tea of lobelia. So, but you can use your extract and put that in there and then consume it. I did drink a lot of tea, a whole lot of tea, and Elecampane and coltsfoot were big stars in that. These, of course, are different herbs. They are, how should I put this? What do I want to say about them? They're not common. They're not. You can't just go to the grocery store and buy them. I would definitely look at having these around you. grow it in your garden. Coltsfoot, you can use this for bronchitis, really bad congestion, for coughing. In addition to, now I got to tell you, I haven't felt this bad since well before I quit smoking, which was like, I want to say over a decade ago now. It's been a while. It's been a very long time. And, back then when I used to smoke, when I would get sick, I used to get very sick. I haven't been this sick since then. So this was a bad one. But this is, coltsfoot is, one of these anti-tussive herbs. It's expectorant. It's also a demulcent. And I would certainly recommend that you get as many demulcents in as you can. So what is a demulcent herb? The Joan of Arc. I know a lot of these herbs are a little unfamiliar, but I believe I have them all in my book. But coltsfoot, yes, that's exactly right, Flying Dutchman. I may not have put coltsfoot in there. I was limited to space, so. But anyway, coltsfoot. This is something, the reason I brought up, I haven't been this sick since I used to smoke, is that this is one of those herbs that you can use to help with when if you are looking to stop smoking, because when you stop smoking, all of a sudden the cilia in your lungs they start to wake up and they start kicking a lot of stuff out of your lungs, and this helps to get it out and help to make all that coughing easier and more productive and so on. Oh, but I started talking about demulcents. Put these demulcent herbs are herbs that they're moistening and they're sort of ooey gooey. Should I put this? When you allow them just to steep in water, in cool water. If you can incorporate a bit of marshmallow root, a cold infusion of it, and drink that, I can't tell you how that and some licorice in some cold water made a massive difference in how awful, how awful I felt. It made me feel a lot better. Because if you've ever got one of those infections where all of a sudden you can feel yourself drying up, it's the weirdest kind of sensation. All of a sudden you can feel your lips getting drier. You can feel your skin getting drier. You can sort of feel this burning going through your lungs. It's a miserable feeling, but you can almost feel yourself getting dry. When you take in these demulcent herbs and you drink the cold infusion of it, all you do is, let's say you get a quart jar, fill it up, one cup of demulcent herbs, and then cover it in room temperature water and let it sit there for about 4 hours and strain. And once that's done, get the next batch ready so that you have it. So it makes the water in it a little bit slightly thicker. There's a texture to it, but when you but it's not thick. It's you can still drink it, but you drink it, and it helps the mucosal tissues to remoisten themselves. It's a really neat it's a neat response that the body has to these herbs. So marshmallow root and licorice together, I made a cold infusion of that, and that gave me a whole lot more comfort, and it made it a lot easier on my lungs, because when you do have these infections that go into the lungs, your whole chest just hurts from it. Let me see. So I think there's one other thing I want to mention. Along with coltsfoot and along with Elecampane, two other herbs that I used in my teas that I made. Hyssop, strictly medicinal seeds. That is an absolutely wonderful site. You can get a lot of your medicinal herbs that you've never heard of there. It used to be called Horizon Herbs. Now it's strictly medicinal seeds. And definitely go there and check them out. And it's where you can't find, like an herb anywhere else, they probably have it. So in addition, there was hyssop, and it's hyssop. HYSSOP. I used that, and in combination with whole cloves. We're talking like not cloves of garlic, although those are very helpful for cold and flu as well because they help build up your immune system. But I'm talking about cloves like you would stick in a ham. The two of them together are wonderful expectorants, and the clove helps with the pain. So that awful pain that you get from coughing so much. Now, the other thing that I haven't mentioned so far, I'm going to say for right now, is elderberry. Elderflower and elderberry, both of them help. Elderflower is wonderful for kids. It tastes just like honey. It's a very sweet flavored flower. If you don't have an elderberry bush, find one and get it in your yard. You don't need two of them to end up with berries, but the berries will be larger if you have two different cultivars. But you will still get berries even if you only have the one. But it's very effective against the flu. It can shorten the duration of the flu, but it's also an immunostimulant. There's a whole other group of herbs that we didn't get to talk about right now, which are sort of immunostimulants or immune system tonics, things that will strengthen your immune system. But an immunostimulant is something that forces your immune system to work a little harder, so then you might want to address why it wasn't working up to par to begin with. But elderberry is an immunostimulant, so a lot of people take it throughout cold and flu season to prevent the flu. So I had tons of it on hand. Guess who didn't take any? Unfortunately, I was too busy focused on other things. So why did I? I have it. I've got quart jars filled with this stuff just in my freezer. I've also got in my freezer. I've got there are cubes of them. I would put them in the ice cube trays and freeze them in that, and then take them out and put them in a bag. That way, you could get smaller doses of them defrosted faster. So it's a wonderful remedy. Why didn't I take it? I was just focused on other stuff. And unfortunately, herbal medicine can't work if you don't take it. Again, it does come back to making sure you do take care of yourself. But have these things on hand. There's a lot of recipes out there for elderberry syrup. In mine, I always put in ginger, clove, and cinnamon along with it, and garlic. And I always have all of those. I put that in my syrup. You can add other things. You can add wild cherry bark. You could add anise, star anise, excuse me. You don't want to mistake poke plant with elderberry. That would definitely not be a good thing. As far as did I buy it or make it? Oh, I made it. It's just far more cost effective to make it. It's very, very simple. I do go over it in my Herbal Skills Intensive course, and I want to check out herbalprepper.com. And while I'm talking about that, I want to mention that we are just about at the end of the show here. Please go over to herbalprepper.com, check it out. I know I've sort of been away from the site for a while, so I haven't updated it with a new article, but there's going to be some major updates coming in the next 2 weeks there. So go there, sign up for my newsletter. And if you like what you've heard, please do connect with me by following me on Facebook. Look up Herbal Prepper on Facebook, Twitter, G+, Pinterest. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's YouTube/user/Herbal Prepper. And check out my site, and I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, for spending your time with me. I hope you got something out of it. This has been Kat, the Herbal Prepper, with Herbal Prepper Live, and we will see you again next week.